Hey guys, welcome back. BTCR here. We're back with Season 5, Episode 6 of our weekly Q&C&A&T videos. Let's get straight into the questions. Our first one comes from the Glider 40, and they say, Q. Beginner player, does it matter if I wait till 50 before promote? Do augments only come through Survivor?
And we answered this a little bit in the comments already, because there's sort of different levels to it, right? The first part is that final stats doesn't make a difference. Whatever path you choose, you go for the level first or promotion first, you end up at the same place. But there's more to it, I think, right? Depending how you want to play it.
Yeah.
So if there's a character you want to max out anyway, or if you're using it to motor through single player offline story mode fights, then go ahead and promote them as early as you can to take advantage of the stat boost, right? So getting them up the elite level is way faster than improving the stats than you would just leveling them up. And you do it immediately.
Yeah.
But if it's a character that you plan on using in multiplayer, so the not so obvious answer is get to level 50 first. So the idea is you get 5,000 battle points with some golds well before you get to 50 Elite 7. I mean, never mind 60 Elite 10.
Yeah, maxed
different
out.
Cards have, yeah, exactly. And different cards have very different stats at the same level of promotion, right? Because they all have different base stats. So it actually makes a lot of sense to get to level 50 first. Because if you promote him or her first and find a good team composition, that card's stats keep on increasing. And you get closer to 50, you're potentially throwing off the balance of a team that you're happy with, right? So if you get to level 50 first, any adjustments that you make in the character, augmentations, promotions, whatever, it's going to be exactly what you choose and won't change the more you play the character that you like.
And there's an assumption that we're making here, and the assumption is that you're playing the game that we, the way we play it, which is the long game. So because you're a beginner player, I think you probably have a better idea than we do. I know I'm the kind of person where for 90% of mobile games, even if they're really good, I'll pick them up, play them for a while, maybe get really into them for a little bit, and then I'll put them back down again. And if that's the kind of game that you're expecting Injustice to be for you, then it doesn't matter quite as much. So part of it is that this advice is for later on. This advice is for 20, 30, 50 hours down the road. And the question is whether you think that is going to continue, that is going to be relevant advice to you, or if this is more of like a 15-hour game, which is still respectable. That's still a lot of time to put into something, right?
Right, for something free. Although this is a great game. I mean, we're talking like hundreds, if not thousands, of hours now.
Yeah. So we're coming at it from the perspective of people who play the amount that we do and who have played a ton. So it mileage may vary. If you're looking for a long-term setup, which I imagine you are from the way that you formatted your question, you have the most information if you wait, and that's always a good tool. But if you're not looking for a long-term setup, obviously eluding them whenever is how you get the best stats for any given.
I guess I'll point out that if you're not going long-term, then that question doesn't even need to be asked.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Well, you're right. But level 50 for one character is like not kind of long term in the same order of magnitude that what we're talking about is having like a bunch of teams and making sure that they're like all at the same approximate level, looking for long term battle points. That's like we're talking about different levels of time commitment. But you're right, it does seem like the question.
Because the obvious thing would be, well, I'll just max them all out and get the joy out of them now and then dump the game later.
Yeah. So there we go.
Oh, there's a related question,
we have
too.
A related question from Ishan Menon, and they say, love your content, keep it up. Got a question, should I try and keep all my cards to Elite 5, or should I max them out at 7 and then try to do some breakthroughs? Cheers. Thanks for your question.
Yeah, thanks. And it's related because it really depends on what you want, right? And so max battle points is still 5,000. Unbalanced teams, they can be difficult to really enjoy because then, there's really one person that's going to be much bigger offensive force, and the other guys are just
unbalanced teams
barnacles
mostly
on a wheel.
Let you use one person only, unfortunately, because when you're fighting people late on, everybody else is not super useful. It lets you use one person and then tanks. That's the only really role that the other people can take up that that's going to let you use them properly and actually have them be meaningful contributors. They basically have to be tanks.
Yeah, I mean, what you're seeing here is a team. that's all Elite 5, getting 5,000 per round, and a lot of fun to play. And we're taking down what was just that was Elite 7, and now we're gonna have a level 60 Elite 10, and we're gonna embarrass them a little bit. So it depends. But yeah, I think we hit all the points, right?
So there we go. Our next question comes from iProphet 3, and they say, "And man, these Komodas are so in sync. Are you guys post-editing them? WTF?"
Short answer?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, are we? I am not. You are.
Yeah. Well, because I've got a better setup here,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I'm the one that's still got our main computer.
Yeah, I'm working off a
It's
laptop.
actually been... Right. It's actually been a lot easier and harder at the same time to do these videos separately than I originally thought it would be, right? Thanks to you, iProphet, and our other patrons, having a second good quality mic means we've been able to do it for the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, so I'm using the old mic, the Blue Snowball Ice, and
I am using the Blue Yeti.
yeah, and so really the audio quality would have been pretty mediocre otherwise. We didn't actually have a good solution for recording setups, and we would have had to make a decent couple months worth of ad revenue investment into it to actually get a setup working. But
or use the crappy built-in mic on the laptop.
But thanks to our patrons, not only did we not have to basically grapple with the fact that we'd have to spend a few months of ad revenue just to break even on a mic, we got to get a mic, feel really good about it, and make this transition as smooth as possible.
So maybe what I want to do is talk a little bit about how the whole idea of behind the scenes, how the sausage gets made, right? So even with all right, so here's our setup. We've got the videos on a secondary channel on YouTube. We're watching them together, and we're talking on Google Hangouts. We're watching them simultaneously on Rabbit.
Yeah, rab.it.
Right. But even with a really good internet connection, there's a fraction of a second lag.
Yeah.
So that when one of us hears it in sync, the other always hears it out of sync.
Yeah, and this is actually our best solution. If we screen share over Google Hangouts, you don't get a lot of frames and you get incredibly low resolution. There's no basic screen sharing option that can cast a screen effectively. So something like this, where it's actually like a third-party thing that's handling the streaming, and you're just loading a stream from a third source from an already uploaded piece of content and not something that's going out live, is basically the only way that we can get some kind of simulacrum of watching the same video at the same time, like watching it together.
Green Lantern.
Yeah, the problem always is then the audio, there's just that lag between it. It's not like one of us is on the moon or something where there's like minutes. Is there minutes from the moon? Is that Mars?
There's
remember.
not minutes from the moon. For
seconds,
for
maybe.
light, yeah, it's
Light seconds? Okay, yeah, that doesn't, the minutes didn't sound right.
Yeah.
But it's still something, right? Because it's, electrons flying back and forth.
I mean, we could Google it. Maybe somebody else can Google it for us so that there's not the clicking noises.
Yeah, all right, so the short answer, yeah, we are doing post-editing so that we're saying Komoda instead of Komoda.
Yeah. Here, wait.
And all right, so the other thing I found really hard about this, it's getting the balance of sound right, since it always seems like one of us is much louder than the other, and it seems to change depending on whether I'm listening to it on in Audacity or in Windows Movie Maker. So the problem is that it sometimes takes maybe even an hour longer to because I'm sometimes having to edit the sound and then transcode the video again.
Now here, I did Google it. If you heard the clicking, it takes about 1.3 seconds. Light travels through space at 186,000 miles per second. The moon is just under 250,000 miles from Earth. So light from the moon's surface has to travel more than 1 second, about 1.3 seconds to reach us. And that's from hcmut.edu.vn.
Alright, so that's university, HCI, alright.
Yeah, that's a weird URL though. It's www4.
Right. Oh, you know what else? I should say I want to give a shout out to Google, because really, I mean, I know Google owns YouTube, but without Google and Google Drive, we wouldn't be able to do this. Google Drive is a godsend, and despite not having, have you put in the MP3 codecs for Audacity yet?
I have not. It's
all right. So
been busy.
Okay, but despite saving it as a WAV file, which is much bigger
and much higher
uploading and
quality, which is
downloading
actually
audio track-
probably good for our overall content quality.
Yeah, and it's quick and painless.
Yeah.
So if we, like I said, if we weren't doing it simultaneously, and that was just like a bit of a crapshoot, it just really shows you how good Audacity is. I just clip out a bit of the audio and try to line everything up, and I guess it turns out okay.
Yeah, so a huge thank you to Google Drive, Google Hangouts, Audacity, Rabbit,
and YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah, and then, of course, Warner Brothers for Injustice.
Yes,
they've all been very good. Okay, perfect. Our next question comes from Mr. E, and they say, I forgot to ask this last time. Didn't hear it clearly on the last vid. What were the podcasts that you listened to? And anyone else recommend podcasts? Looking for stuff for the commute. Now, first off, I would like to say, I can't specifically recommend us, but people have mentioned that they use us like podcasts. And that's pretty cool.
It is, actually.
So I can go through all the podcasts that I listen to. A lot of them are McElroy content, but right now I'm listening to Serial, The Adventure Zone, Sawbones, My Brother, and Me, Let's Make a Music, which is ending next week, unfortunately. I only listen to Mountain Goats' In Between Seasons. There's Wonderful, Dear Hank and John. I listened to a couple of episodes. Welcome to Night Vale was a show that I listened to and loved, and then got kind of out of it recently.
That's why we went to NerdCon, was for Welcome to Night Vale. Oh, so you know what? Maybe we won't get the list up tonight when we post the video as quick as we can, but maybe tomorrow you'll add that to the description.
Yeah, and here's one that isn't quite fitting with the family-friendly nature of our content. My Dad Wrote a Porno is a really funny one. Obviously, subject matter, it's not appropriate, but it's entertaining. And
you went to the show, right?
I went to the show.
How was that?
It was the show was okay. The show honestly isn't the best representation of what the content is, because they do the same content every time, and that's not really what the podcast is about. So it's not super representative of the actual thing, but it was okay. It was cool to see them in person. Right. The show itself wasn't particularly special.
All right, so it's not like seeing Welcome to Night Vale in person.
No, Welcome to Night Vale in person is a real experience, and it's really cool.
Because I remember it was Eliza Rickman was the weather for that show that we saw. Yeah. Down at I believe it was the Danforth.
And there's some other podcasts that I've heard really good things about that I'm interested in trying. Reply All is next on my list of podcasts to try. I've heard a lot of really, really good things about that.
Okay, so we'll add the list of the different podcasts in the description sometime, maybe tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and the podcasts that you listen to are mostly a subset of the podcasts I listen to, aren't they?
Yeah, I love Sawbones.
Yeah.
I actually don't listen to podcasts nearly as much as I probably could or should, but yeah, Sawbones I'm really enjoying. So that's the medical podcast that one of the McElroy brothers does
Justin
with his
McElroy
wife.
and Sydney McElroy.
Yeah. She's a doctor.
Yeah, so the McElroy...
And not a PhD doctor.
Yeah, the McElroy family of podcasts are a wonderful suggestion, and if you find literally anything from them, I highly recommend it. Now they pretty much only do podcasts. They also used to do video content on Polygon for games, and there's a lot of really good series, including Monster Factory, which is, just incredible if you're looking for good gaming comedy. And it's like Let's Plays, but almost ascended. It's like a higher level Let's Play. It's really, really good.
Yeah, it amazes me actually that for the volume of work that they do, that they can still be entertaining and funny for so much of it.
Yeah, they do a really, really good job. So that's what my recommendation would be for podcasts.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Our next question comes from Zach Clark, and we are also going to include a reply, which is an answer to the question. Zach Clark says, I have a question. How did you get your logo? Looks similar to Lobo. And then Andrew Jacobson replies, I almost said Jackson. That's not his name. They say, if I'm not mistaken, it's a drawing of their Lobo stuffed toy. The toy is lost in Spain.
Yeah, all right, so that's actually pretty close to being the right answer. It is a picture of Lobo, but it's not a drawing. It's a photo.
Yeah, I was screwing around in Photoshop. Not very good at Photoshop. It's just a bunch of like contrast filters basically, and then like a threshold filter applied so that everything's either black or white initially, and then we just added red. I think you added red to his eyes.
I added red in Microsoft Paint because that's my tool of choice. That's actually what I use for making. This is more making the sausage. How do we make the sausage? I use Microsoft Paint for all our thumbnails for our very distinctive aesthetic, which I guess it's not nearly as frantic as some of the thumbnails and not as attractive. But I guess that's our thing.
Yeah. So it is our Lobo stuffed toy, for sure.
And he was lost in Europe, probably Italy, actually, maybe Spain. But I think I mentioned this before. He's got Velcro hands. He was in my pocket, and if I brushed up against somebody, there's a good chance he might have made a run for it, like grabbed onto somebody and taken off.
Yeah.
On a trip through Europe.
On a separate note, maybe one of the next things that we buy with our Patreon money is a replacement.
That would be kind of
because
sweet.
We definitely have enough to purchase a replacement Lobo.
Well, it depends. Apparently, he's really rare. And the only one I've seen on eBay recently, it's like $170 or something.
Yeah, and I saw an online source that had it for like 35, but like it's not easy to get.
No, all right. So that was it's another buy and sell website that is supposed to be local, so nobody's shipping it. And I saw that too. The guy was in Japan.
Yeah.
He had it for $30, and it's, again, apparently they're really based. I confirmed this based on our experience. They're really rare.
Yeah.
And I'm not really looking to replace our mascot or avatar with Batmite. So yeah, I think we've got to be looking to see if we can find another Lobo.
Yeah, if somebody else can find one for us and send us the link, we will happily purchase it in exchange. I don't know, a shout out.
Yeah.
Some sort of. We would be very thankful for it. If somebody could find us a reasonably priced replacement.
I'll keep my eyes out. I'm going to see if we can find locally. There's a lot of comic book stores in Toronto, and we just got to start making our way through that.
So there we go.
Right.
Our next question comes from John Random, and they say, so how do I get better gear? Survivor never dropped good gear, even when I land on the gear thing, which is rare. And any pack I open always only gives me 1 or 2 star gears. I've been playing for years and have great characters, but no gear. I have like 1 4-star gear card and maybe 1 5-star and a bunch of 1 or 2 star gear. It sucks. And then we've got another question from Quisito, and they say Quisito. I'm not sure.
Let us know how to pronounce your name.
And they say, I have 2 questions. What is a good way to get gear? And I'd really like an efficient way. All I have is 2/3 of the 4th world gear set and Razagul Scimitar. Those are the only good ones. And my second question would be, do you think the reason why Injustice glitch community is so big and popular is because of how hard and difficult it is to progress in Injustice? I can't imagine how long it would take to get just one character to Elite 10, level 60. Oh, and I'm going to add another question. Edit. How does the challenge reset glitch work? I'm on an iOS BTW. Thank you so much to anyone that replies. And so, these are a good set of questions. It's interesting. It's also a bit of an insight into the experience of getting gear that I think maybe I've lost over having it for so long.
Right. Someone already answered the question about there being no challenge reset on iOS already, so we're going to skip over that.
Thanks for your questions, guys.
Yeah. The short answer for how to get good gear and sort of accelerate progress is really using the airplane mode glitch so that you only spend your last laugh tickets on the when you get the gears that you want.
Yeah.
Corollary to that is Survivor. Because I guess you can use the airplane mode glitch both on last laugh tickets and a gear locker too. And the MP Online glitch. And I say glitch over and over because the problem is you're right, really isn't a great strategy. It takes a long time. And the underlying, it's not so much a problem, but part of the reason why it's difficult and why Injustice is such a good game, it's really 2 games.
They're 2 really disparate systems that play into each other but aren't really the same thing.
Right, it's a collecting game and it's a fighting game. And so some people might like both, but anyone who only likes the fighting part is going to get easily frustrated with the time that it takes to unlock that new content in this case being the gear.
Yeah.
And the gear is really important because improving your characters fast it's easy to do, and it gets you through the single player mode faster, and it gets you to the point where you can actually grind for more credits and farm more credits easily. But what it does is it actually makes your multiplayer online experience worse, because that's gear is where you'd actually get the advantage, and the higher up you get with your characters is where you would need the advantage. So it's not, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but a common strategy for people is to try to get as fast as they can before realizing that what they've done is make the multiplayer online experience more frustrating.
Yeah, and I would posit even that it's more like 3 games. There's a pretty heavy strategy element to it too, as far as the customization goes, even just with characters into teams, into gears. If you look at just those layers, even if you're coming from the perspective that everything's maxed out, or you know, something like that, there's still or that there's nothing left for you to, like, you know, upgrade, or nobody left to like elite at all. There's still a huge component of strategy where that's almost, to me, like an entirely separate, you know, facet of it. Yeah. It's an entirely different dimension.
I was originally going to lump that in with the fighting part, but you're right, because the defensive part really highlights why the strategy matters, even though it's somebody else playing it, right? Not somebody else, but something else playing the AI.
And I mean, if you think about it, the style of game it is like an arcade-style fighting game, right? And I think one of the best arcade-style fighting games, if not the best arcade-style fighting game on mobile, right?
Right.
That style of game doesn't have even like really like any of that like customization aspect to it. That's a system that very like traditionally has been specifically like removed from fighting games to put everybody on like an equal playing field. And I think in this case it totally changes the nature and the structure of the gameplay, where the strategy feeds into how you play, but it's a totally separate dimension where once you're playing, you're just playing the best strategy for whatever the guys you have are, and what gear they have, and like, you know, the fact that they're in a team and all that disappears, and what actually matters is just the mechanics. Stuff too. Oh yeah, that's like the different game modes, and then
the technique.
Yeah,
like the for tapping fast enough, for swiping fast enough.
Those are almost more of like part of the actual challenge of gameplay. Like I think that is part of the fighting. Yeah, but so there's and the minigame style is actually a really interesting way to handle player skill separate from strategy,
because the UI isn't there, right? It's not like we have a
the control, the inputs are not high complexity, and they can't be high complexity by design almost. Okay. Our next question comes from Yazan, Kayali. Again, let us know how to pronounce it. Let me know. And they say, I'm going to Madman. I always losing in a team which contains Red Sun, Green Lantern, all Fourth World gear, Injustice 2 Superman, all LexCorp gear, Batman, Ninja Helmet, Killer Croc Companion, Gingold Soda. This team, a lot of times I fight them, and each time I lose, man. I am mad. It is impossible to kill this team.
So, again, point of fact, it's not like he's shy about it, or they're shy about it. This person is a self-admitted hacker, and we've already talked about how people who hack often have trouble knowing how to use what they've got.
Yeah, because it's the time you have a high level of character, but not necessarily a lot of practice engaging in the gameplay or the strategy elements. Which is this is a perfect example of how it's 3 separate games, right? Where the actual collection part of this is not the issue; it's the loadout, and it's the actual mechanical skill once you're in.
Right. So, talking about the team that Yazan is facing and losing to, with the loadout that they've got, they shouldn't be doing enough damage that it's easy to lose, unless they've set up the team wrong. To me, there's so many strategies to beat this team, right? So, Injustice 2 Superman's vulnerability is Tantu Totem. The first special removes his shield, and power comes back, and the second special should, depending on who you've got, the second special, if you use a special 2, should most of the time knock him out. Red Sun Green Lantern is immune to stun and crit, so his weakness is actually damage over time. And when you look at the gear that he's got, so Green Lantern, all Fourth World gear, there's not really a lot of offensive potential, so you could actually just Tantu Totem special to him repeatedly by tagging your specialist repeatedly and just doing damage, but it's actually a lot of fun when you've got a damage over time guy, like sometimes we do with Aquaman. and you just bleed them out.
Yeah.
And they can't do anything about that. Batman Ninja Batman's weakness are his teammates. So even if he's not taking a lot of damage, one option is doing lots of splash damage. So any of the Batgirls geared with Cloak of Destiny, League of Assassins Knives, and whatever the last one is, if you need to give them more damage on special one or just power, go just do a ton of splash damage. And the Batman Ninja Batman will actually take still that big chunk. His passive doesn't protect him from taking less splash damage.
Yeah.
Or go for damage over time. That works too. Claw of Horus. Claw of Horus is great because it's perfect when he's the last man standing and you're worried about having to let a couple of your guys drop off to take away the passive where he takes less damage.
Yeah.
So don't worry about it. Just have somebody with Claw of Horus and special one him a couple times. He loses his gear, and then he's still tough, but he's not nearly as much trouble.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's it.
Yeah. There we go. Our next question, and this is a long one. This isn't really a question. This is
a C, not a Q. It's a C.
That's true. There's questions in it. This is from Arian Munir, now renamed to I'm Shiamiz. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's very long, but basically it starts, alright, so this is my last comment ever in your videos. Not only because I quit Injustice, but also for the attitude that you have shown in this video. I'm so sorry. I should have watched this video earlier, then I wouldn't have behaved so nicely with you in the past 3 to 4 days.
Alright, so you said you're not going to read all of it?
I'm not going to read all of it. This is the start. And then this is coming back to the Flashpoint Batman comment that he wanted us to put in one of our Q&A&T videos, and then
Q&C&A&T
videos. The C always gets me. I swear, even when I say it, every time I'm on the edge of forgetting. But so he talks about how he didn't threaten to unsubscribe to us, didn't threaten to unfollow us, didn't say he would abuse us. And he's finishes up by saying, I didn't want to say this, you left me no other choice. Now I'm just wondering why you were so eager to help a subscriber you hate so much. And so then he follows up by saying, stay in peace, bye bye, you are unsubscribed, BDC Care Gaming.
Yeah, so alright, we did reply to this originally to make clear that we were talking about other comments. So in the actual comment section, we had a reply to this saying that we're not saying that particular question was problematic. It's all the other stuff that's problematic, which isn't a reason not to answer the question, but it influences how we perceive a comment like that, right?
And I think one of the things that we should say is that it's not even specifically like any of this other stuff. The reason why we didn't answer that question was just because we didn't have anything to say about the question. And
we mentioned that last time too.
Yeah, and coming back to it, saying like, well, maybe I just won't comment anymore, I won't give you anything to respond to, is I think it's fair to say that's a very entitled perspective to take on it. It's an aggressive stance to say, well, if you don't answer this, if you don't address this one thing in one of your videos, then
these are consequences coming to you.
This is what I'm going to do to you. And so you're right, you didn't tell us that you'd abuse us or unsubscribe or stop watching our videos, but you also weren't like, oh, why didn't you answer the question? You were like, you didn't answer the question, this is what I'm going to do about it, which is there's a lot of anger. I think you're maybe now absolving yourself of some of the agency that you had, and the way that you responded.
So what's interesting, all of that's actually kind of old though, right? Like, this is not new stuff, and it's not why we're bringing this back as a C.
Yeah, because that's beating a dead horse at this point.
Right, because
Arian's also made it clear that they're not going to watch this video, so I guess I don't need to.
But the interesting part is, now I'm just wondering why you were so eager to help a subscriber you hate so much. So that's the interesting part to me. Why help? And it touches on something maybe a little bit bigger that comes up in other areas of life.
Yeah, well, first off, we don't hate you.
But that's
Using
it.
problematic language doesn't make you an inherently bad person. It's just not something you should do.
Right. But there's the idea that somehow the only people who deserve help are really good people or really blameless people. And I have a problem with that, right? And maybe another example, right, where in healthcare,
Yeah.
sometimes when you talk to people about healthcare, they think that there's an attitude among some people that only the people who are really good and healthy deserve to get treatment, so that people who do unhealthy things deserve what they get. And when it in sort of at a societal level for the government, when it comes time to cut back on health services because of costs, that's where they cut people off, the people who they feel like deserve it. Right?
Yeah, and on a crappier level, there's the kind of justification that everybody deserves it, where people don't want to introduce social programs because they go, well, why don't they have a job, right? Where the idea is that inherently, by being a certain way, it means that they don't deserve help. And that we can tie it back to the specific scenario. Using problematic language isn't even necessarily something that you're aware of. I think in Arian's case, it's unlikely that they weren't aware of the maybe the either the shock value or the offensiveness, and that was part of the point of what they're saying. It wasn't actually meant to be, you know, just a neutral language. It was obviously meant to be insulting, but you know, being used to that and growing up in a culture where that language is used, it sucks, and it's not a thing that you should do and engage in. But if you don't know any better, it's also an easy choice to make.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe the broader point too, where there's blame assigned, and again we get back to the deserving, not deserving things, right? To me, I think it's wrong from at least, we're running out of time, so maybe we'll either actually just have like a blank screen now that we've gone through. That was 3 ultimates already.
Okay, yeah, we'll figure out something. We'll put content here.
Okay, so I think it's wrong for at least a couple of different reasons, right? Because if you look at it from 2 different ways, the first one is, who gets to decide how much blame is enough? Like, how much is blameworthy enough? So, for example, like smoking, right?
Yeah.
Smokers get blamed for lung cancer and heart attacks and whatever. So, so do smokers deserve not to get health care? And if you really believe that, then maybe it's not just a matter of the idea of it. Then does it the degree? What about exercise? If someone doesn't exercise, do they deserve to get sick? If someone isn't wearing their seatbelt, should they not get an ambulance ride to the hospital after they get in a car accident?
Yeah, and you know, there's a ton of scenarios in which there's something that somebody could have done to avoid the situation that they're in. But you have to ask, when you're helping, what is a meaningful judgment that you should be making if it's help that you're willing to provide.
Right, and that brings me to the second point, because really, when you make a judgment, how are you deciding where the blame lies? Is it, for example, a societal issue that unhealthy foods taste really good, have long shelf life, and are easily available, and actually sometimes cheaper too, right?
Yeah.
Like the number of calories you need to take, or that you need to take in to get your belly full, it's a lot less. Or is it the individual's fault for not prioritizing spending money on more expensive but healthier foods over other things that make them happy and give them joy and keep them mentally well?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and then if we're going to start talking about societal and institutional causes, right? I mean, that's sort of the big picture stuff of sexism, racism. And that's, I guess that's well beyond the purview of an injustice channel. Or maybe it's not. It is injustice, right?
Yeah. Not that kind, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, okay, so I guess here's the thing. I think if it's not obvious, I'll say it. Like, we like to help. Based on the instructional videos from the very beginning, that was our attempt to make a difference. I mean, we don't always have time to help on an individual basis, but when there's something that's interesting and we can have a chance to be helpful, we dig in and try a little bit, right? But as much as we enjoy it, there's still that maybe that complexity of people. There's a cost to being subjected to what I consider toxic comments. Yeah. And all right, so we've done some screen caps that were linked in the reply to the original comment that we're talking about, just as an illustration. And reading that kind of stuff is not just disappointing, but it's really draining.
Yeah, and it's not even about assigning blame, right? Like we said, assigning blame is a really big thing. And it's not that we think this is a person who, out of nowhere, decided that, you know, these words are acceptable and good to use and good to apply to other people, right? It's not about saying that this is your fault and you're a bad person for using these words, because that's not what we're saying. And we don't dislike you as a person because you're, you know, choosing to use these words.
Yeah, because we, again, I don't want to really like try to pretend I'm woke or anything, but this is not one of those things that I get worked up about.
People,
I mean, I don't like it. I don't want to promote it, and I want to maybe, I don't know, moderate a little bit the kind of audience that we have.
Yeah, there's people that I like, and people that I like in almost every other way who use problematic language, who have problematic behavior, and I don't think it inherently...
Some people we know very well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think...
That's a family joke.
I don't think it inherently makes them bad people, but I do think that it's fair to judge people for the things that they do. I think, obviously, intention and context and how you learn something is... like a fair factor in whether, like, how much fault it is, and how much blame lies in you for being a certain way. But I think after a certain extent, it doesn't matter why you're away. It matters at the end of the day, especially in a format like YouTube. It's like, if we don't want to respond to somebody, we just don't. And it's
right, because there's different levels of intervention, right?
Yeah.
Like we have options to ban a specific commenter.
Yeah.
We could delete the comments, or we could just let it go.
And it's not about blame or punishment. It's just that we don't feel like it, and at the end of the day, we
don't want it here. That's all.
Yeah, we do what we want to do, because the channel is for fun, and it's always been for that. Unless the Patreons really want us to do something, and then or you know, and of course, if people just ask for like content that they generally want, right? You know, like you, the viewer, definitely has control over the type of content that we make, but only as long as the stuff that you're suggesting is stuff that we can actually see ourselves enjoying doing in the first place.
Okay, so because we're well over time, maybe we'll cut the next part. There was a follow-up comment from the same person after changing their name to I'm Shiamiz, and there was one point that I want to pull out of like a big chunk. It was, I may have abused other guys, but did I ever do it to you?
Mm-hmm. And
I mean, there's other stuff too, right? That lots of other people use that kind of language. That, you know, why are we trying to humiliate somebody by pointing out what they're saying? And in my mind, you know, if there's any humiliation in it, I think it's inherent in the statements.
Yeah, and
if they're not bad, then there's not a problem, right?
Yeah, and obviously we don't want to get too preachy here, but I don't think it's too preachy to say I may have abused other guys, but have I ever abused you is not an argument. Is not like a good argument for you know, somebody who is a moderator of like a comment section to not care. It's like, oh yeah, you're just yelling at people who watch our videos. You're not yelling at us specifically. Okay.
So it brings to mind something, and it's interesting because I actually had to look this up. There was a quote that's been used in different ways, originally from a pastor named Martin Niemöller, and I'll just read it here. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist.
Mm-hmm.
Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me.
Yeah, so there you go. I think we've talked about this a lot, and I don't think there's too much. I think there's a lot more that we can say, but I don't think there's too much more that we need to say. This would be a good opportunity for people in the comments to let us know if this is the kind of thing that they care about, because at the end of the day, we might still talk about this stuff when it's important to us, but we can also recognize if this channel is not the forum for that, and that's kind of acceptable too, for us to just quietly, you know, have our opinions and try to make this channel the kind of space that we would want to visit.
Well, we can still talk to each other. We just won't be. It'll be the kind of conversation that we maybe won't be having with our viewers at the same time.
But yeah, so I definitely think this is one of the, like, a bigger thing. And we definitely haven't covered everything. But you know, I think to some extent this is worth talking about, and you know, I guess it's worth you as a viewer knowing what our stance on things are, right? Even if this is not like a political channel, and honestly, I don't feel like
Everything's
I don't feel
political.
like this should be a political issue even. It still feels like one. And so, you know, for the people who agree with us, you know that you know that coincidentally we're also on the same page, and if you disagree with us, then you know you can you have that knowledge about us too, and whatever that means.
Okay, so you know what? I am never gonna finish getting a chance to talk about the flashlights.
God.
I'm still saving that. That's, I guess, my backup plan one time. One of these days, I'm just gonna finish talking about why I like 4.7 so much and what happened to them.
Yeah, so this was a big talking point. A little weird note to end the video on, but we are super out of time. So we're gonna give a huge thank you to our patrons. I feel like plugging our Patreon at this point would feel a little bizarre, even.
Right, but we gotta thank them because a big thank you to Eddy G, Edwin Felix, and Console Peasant, who are still supporting us at the highest last word tier. iProphet, who's supporting us at the Your Message Here tier. And Shawn, Farrell, and Daniel Simonson, who support us on the credited level.
And all of these people are apparently fine about our social justice bloviating, which I appreciate. You are our people.
Excellent.
And
Yes.
thank you to everybody else who has also put up with our social justice bloviating and watched to the end of this video. A huge thank you to everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Komoda.